Common treatments for PTSD. Let's say I got some of these PTSD symptoms. I'm trying to get some help. I've decided, okay, screw this. My kids are more important than how I'm being perceived at work. I'm gonna go get some help. What types of treatments are gonna be the things that we're gonna see when we're working with these first watch clinicians and things like that?
3 categories that we're gonna talk about here. Number 1 is what you already mentioned, psychotherapy. Number 2 is skills, what we call skills and resourcing. And then number 3, your support system.
Great.
So I'll break those down. Individual therapy is going to be one of the best, or one of the first ones that people usually seek in terms of psychotherapy, right? So individual therapy, meeting one-on-one with a therapist for 50 to 60 minutes. That's where you're going to build trust and rapport with someone like me, a therapist, where I'm going to really want to get to know you, get to know your symptoms, get to know you as a person, and trying to make meaning, right? Also processing that trauma. I think it would be helpful to define processing. It's when we're moving the trauma. So again, the trauma gets stored in our brain and body. It's moving it from short-term storage, right? We have short-term memory parts of our brain, and then we have long-term parts of our brain. We're trying to move it from that short-term into long-term. Because the reason we have PTSD is because that trauma is stored in our short-term. Remember the lens in which we're viewing the world, right?
So I go through a traumatic event, it gets stuck in short-term memory.
Correct.
And I'm trying to now, if I process it, it gets processed and moved into long-term memory, and it's not as problematic.
Yep, not as, and in fact, the studies show that when someone has successfully healed from trauma, it almost becomes a boring, normal memory. You'll know you've healed from a traumatic memory when it no longer impacts you. It's still there, you can still remember it, the details, everything.
We can do this, Mitch?
We
can help people?
We can.
Take the stuff that's so big and huge and I can't stop thinking about it, to becoming this thing that doesn't even really affect my day-to-day?
Yes, and I will die on that hill. It takes hard work. It's going to involve feeling, right? One of the biggest, most important parts of healing trauma is actually feeling the pain. So it's going to require that you go there. Again, this is why it's helpful to have the support of a therapist, like an individual therapy or group therapy, to guide you through this process, because it's hard and it's worth it.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So, things that your therapist might do with you. I'm going to throw some acronyms at you here, just really quick. They might do EMDR, which is, again, working with those memories. They might do mind-body bridging, so learning to find balance between the mind and body again. IFS, or internal family systems, working with those protective parts of you to help unburden the pained parts. And then things like somatic therapy, so working with the body. Again, the trauma gets stored in the body, and so releasing it from the body. Things like somatic experiencing, stuff like that.
Just kind of feeling it and getting it out and letting it go and moving on from
Releasing it, moving on.
Releasing, grieving that moment of life or what didn't happen for you or did happen to you. Yeah, that's...
Grief is, I almost want to say it's an essential part of the healing process.
It's almost, I have a therapist friend who says it's all grief.
Yeah,
really and grieving is this really beautiful human process of moving on and letting go, and essentially it's moving from short-term to long-term memory. These images, these thoughts, these feelings, and things. Other things that therapists do in sessions besides just the processing would be what?
Teaching skills. Skills. There's a big therapy modality out there called dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is going to teach you coping skills. So things like, there's 4 modules. There's mindfulness, so learning how to be more present and mindful in the moment. Distress tolerance, so learning how to tolerate in the moment distress when a trigger arises. Then we have emotion regulation. So again, bringing balance, restoring balance to all the spectrum of our emotions. And then finally, what we call interpersonal effectiveness. So learning how to communicate more effectively and in a balanced manner with other people. Because again, trauma really can take a toll on our relationships, and so it's going to teach us how to do that.
So therapists and counselors work through all that stuff. No, they don't just do process, let's talk about hard traumas and stuff like that. They do skills teaching. We do, mindfulness is a big one, but more than anything, I like to think of this skills and resourcing part is just getting better at life.
Yeah.
There's a skill set to life, and we're not taught that in school. You learn your habits about lifing, if you will, from your family. We're trying to change the way that you function, operate, live day to day. And it genuinely improves your overall well-being. You become a happier, kinder, better sleeping, more energized individual by learning these skills and practicing these tools, really, right? My favorite of those mindfulness exercises is and will always be cold therapy. Every single morning, and when I work with individual clients, I have everybody do the same thing. It's these 4 things you do right when you wake up. The first thing you do is you do 3 rounds of like 10 deep breaths, and then you take a cold shower, and then you go and do exercise for about 30 minutes, move for 30 minutes, and then you go look near or around the sun, get sunlight directly into your eyes for in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 minutes. Those 4 things, as I have done them consistently, and as people I've taught this do them consistently, are, in my opinion, the most life-changing things that I have found for me and for these individuals.
It's kind of the foundation, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's why it is foundational in creating holistic change in the body, chemical change in the body, and promoting new habits and such. And that's kind of the stuff that we're going to talk about in these individual therapy sessions as we treat the trauma stuff is what actually works. We're not just going to talk about, let's talk about the event, right? Let's talk about the shooting, or let's talk about your mommy issues or whatever. Like, sure, that's a part of it, but more than anything, it's going to be about what are you doing day in and day out? Let's improve your life. Let's make things better for you. What do you like to do?
It's all well and good. Those are beautiful. They work. I'm fully committed to them. I have a degree in
for sure
in doing all of this as a career, right? And at the end of the day, if you're not getting enough sleep, if your nutrition's not quite right, let's say you're a bit out of shape, right? These things, in addition to others, are all going to impact your ability to even process, right? If someone's coming into my office with 4 hours of sleep, is any kind of trauma processing going to be helpful? Not likely. I mean, maybe.
Reality is, getting your life back on track and making your day-to-day functioning, a priority, and making you feel better about being you is the most important thing that will happen when you use any of the First Watch services. That goes from wellness visits all the way down to therapy stuff. We're just wanting to make your life better. There's other stuff that we're helping people get hooked up with, like their own first responder resources within their individual departments and interdepartment first responder resources like peer support groups.
Yep, support groups.
Things like that, yes. Working with, chaplains in the area that we have connections with. Additionally, working with the peer support personnel from your department, from other people's departments, and creating organizational and providing training for these organizations so that they're more well-equipped to deal with some of the tough stuff that will for sure come up as first responders do their daily job.
In addition to this kind of theme of support system, right, I have a question I always ask. How do you want a human again? After PTSD, it kind of takes us away from our humanity, or at least our felt experience of our humanity.
Yeah, because they're in like this survival mode thing of trying to just like make it through the day.
Yeah.
How do you want to human again?
How do you want to be a human again? And this is specifically, I think this is really important for first responders as well. One thing I really admire about first responders is the pride that they take in their job. It becomes an identity.
Definitely.
And that's a double-edged sword, right? Because it helps you on the job, but at the end of the day, you're going to retire. You need to learn how to be a civilian again, right? And so how do you want a human again? What I mean by that is involving yourself in activities, hobbies, meetups, not only with first responders, but with normal people that you feel safe with, that can integrate you back into the community as a whole. That's essential, I would say.
And why are you trying to heal in the first place? To connect.
Yeah.
Because in the end, we're just trying to connect with each other and have fun together and enjoy our lives together. I mean, I like to say the enemy is isolation, but what do all these symptoms eventually drive you towards? Isolation. Further and further disconnected from your life. Reconnecting with life, humaning again, as you said. I love that you used human as a verb. That's awesome. Is so essential. Paramount, right?
Yeah.